Steve Darrow wants to know, you are in the world of the ones who walk away from Omelas. If you could rescue the poor girl who is chained to the wall, but it meant that you must take her place, would you? This assumes that all of the benefits that exist because of the girl's suffering would continue to exist because of your suffering. So it's a fantastic story. I've talked about it a couple times. It's just, I cannot recommend this highly enough. I cannot recommend this highly enough. I want to say it's Ursula K. Le Guin, virtually positive about that one. Go out and find, it's on the web, just Google it. It's called The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas, O-M-E-L-A-S. And for those of you who haven't read it, here's the story. Spoiler, obviously, so I guess no point in really reading it because I'm about to tell you what happens. However, it's certainly worth reading. So here's the point of this story. Ursula K. Le Guin talks about a town called Omelas. And Omelas is an amazing place. It's absolutely spotless, absolutely clean. It's absolutely safe. They don't have to worry about invasion. They don't have to worry about disease. They don't have to worry about anything. There's plenty of food, and the food is delicious. There's no murder. There's no rape. There's no stealing. There's no crime. Nobody dies of infant diseases. Nobody dies in childbirth. Life is perfect. It's nothing but silver trumpets and blue silk banners snapping in the wind, and it's philosophy, and it's poetry, and it's love, and the parents love each other, and they love their kids, and there's not the slightest bit of problems. People live long, happy lives, and none of this is fake. This is all 100% true. It's all 100% true. That's not like they're in a dream. It's not like they're imagining it. It's actually true. You have found actual paradise on earth where everybody is happy, healthy, and lives a long time. And then you find out in the story that the reason that Omelas is that way, the reason that they're so free of crime and disease and hatred and bigotry and death and all the rest of it, disfigurement, is because in the basement, in a dungeon, in one of the rooms in Omelas, is a little girl, 5 or 6 years old, and she's chained to the floor, and she sits in a corner covered in her own filth. And they sling slops of mush at her once a day and some water. And she suffers. And it's her suffering that buys all of the prosperity and happiness and wealth and love that goes on out in the world. She is the reason. It's her suffering that ensures that the thousands or hundreds of thousands of people live absolutely happy lives. And she's chained down there. She didn't do anything, but her suffering is the reason that Omelas does so well. And all the students, the parents bring their kids down to see this person and look at them, and sometimes they poke her with a stick, and sometimes they're grateful, but nevertheless, everybody knows that we're only able to live this idyllic, wonderful life because of this creature down here who's suffering. Now, this is why this is such a terrific story, because it's a test of your moral character. If you're a collectivist, you can say and be truthful. Let's not mince words here. This is the truth. The truth is, yes, of course we should continue this, because while it's a tragedy that these things are happening to this one person, if she were to die, if we were to release her, then there would be thousands of children who are starving, thousands of children who are in dungeons, thousands of children who are raped by relatives, thousands of women who are going to be murdered, thousands of children that never even get to be 6 years old because they die of horrible diseases. And all of this is going to happen if we take care of this, if we take this one person out of the equation. And so therefore, it is nothing but net good to have one person suffering rather than having everybody suffer equally or worse. It's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer that this is a good deal. But as Ursula K. Le Guin says in the story, however, there are some people, not many, just a few, who go down there and see this girl, and then they think about it, and they walk away from Omelas. They walk away from paradise. They walk away from the perfect city, the safe, rich, happy, genuinely happy, wonderful place. They walk away. And they walk away because they can't take it. Because they can't take the fact that their happiness is based on somebody else's misery. And this is why this story is so good, because it actually genuinely, I bet you anything, if you ask people on the left or the right about this question, the huge majority of people on the right would leave, and the huge majority of people on the left would stay. And the people who make the case for staying have a very, very, very good argument. They've got an absolutely, completely airtight, logical, moral argument, but I would, of course, leave. And the reason I would leave is because that girl, I am not going to allow somebody's misery to pay for my happiness. It's unjust. And the reason that people on the right would walk away is because they understand that their happiness or misery has to be based on their own decisions and their own actions. You cannot. It is not a zero-sum game. In other words, I can go out and be as happy as I want to, and my happiness is not going to take away somebody else's happiness. Somebody doesn't have to be miserable in order for me to be happy. Somebody doesn't have to be poor in order for me to be rich. The idea that all of this prosperity and wealth, a warm family, and everybody would never leave me, because it wouldn't be mine. It wouldn't belong to me. It would belong to this girl who's down there right now while we're sitting up here having our warm Christmas and we're toasting with apple cider and we've got wonderful presents and everybody's happy and healthy. Down there somewhere in a dungeon is a girl who's lying there all by herself, sick and crying and terrified and lonely. And that's why we're all doing so well. This is a tremendous moral quandary. And it's very much like some of the moral quandaries that you'll get where if a train is going down a track and you could switch it so if it goes down continue down the same track, if you don't switch it, it'll kill 5 people, but if you do switch it onto a siding, then it'll only kill 1 person. And what do you do here? And these are the kind of things that are actually genuinely interesting. But I simply could not. My happiness has to be my happiness. It can't be somebody else's. It can't be somebody else paying for it, because then it's not right. My existence and happiness does not have to be dependent on somebody else's suffering. And if it turned out that I was born into a world where I realize that it was dependent on somebody else's suffering, then I would leave. But that's actually not the question. The question's actually a little bit more interesting than that. The question is, if you could rescue the poor girl who is chained to the wall, but it meant that you must take her place, would you? It said, and basically says, if I took her place, then the city would continue unabated. I would become the sacrificial lamb and not her. Well, my immediate reaction was to say, no, I'm not going to suffer for these people up there in the same way I don't expect them to suffer for me. It's not. It's unearned. It's evil in the beginning, right? I mean, it's evil in the beginning. So if it's evil with her there, Steve, then it's got to be evil with somebody else there. Although certainly me making a decision changes the equation somewhat. It makes it voluntary. But I'm not going to put myself in that position because I have a right to a happy life too. Now, if you were asking me if you could save the girl, and there was a good chance of saving the girl and a poor chance of you getting out of this rescue attempt, that's a different story. Then I would do it. I really do believe I would do it. I would get her out of there and we'd leave together. But that's not what this says. This says, would you put yourself in her place? I don't think I would. Although I can sit here and say that, and I know for a certain fact that the minute I get down there, I would. The minute I saw her, I would do it. Yes, of course I would do it. I would certainly do it. Yeah, I would much rather just get her out and get both of us out, and I would trade places with her. But you know what? Here's the deal I would make. I would say this. I would say I'll trade places with this girl, and I will live in this dungeon in her place. But if I do that, you have to take away all of the benefits. What? You're going to do the suffering anyway. Why do you take away the benefits? Because the two can't be linked to each other. They can't be. They cannot be linked to each other. So I'll spend the rest of my life on this dungeon floor, not to make those people happy, but to get this girl out of there. I think that's really it. The reason I said at first I wouldn't do it is because I was looking at it from the perspective of I would not be a sacrificial victim for other people's happiness. However, confronted with a 6-year-old girl who's in there crying, I could take it more than she could, far better than she could. Yes, I'd get her out of there. But if it was within my power to stop the deal, then I would probably stop the deal. I would do anything I could to stop this arrangement. Okay, because it's It's a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant story. And the first time I read it, just gave me chills. And by the way, there was no doubt about it. I mean, I didn't have to think about this. The last line is, some people leave and they never come back. And it's like, yeah, of course I would leave. I'm curious to know if anybody reads that story and says, of course I would stay. I mean, clearly the story is a super well balanced story. It's why it's so effective. But it actually occurs to me, are there people that read this and say, oh, hell yes, I would stay? There must be. There must be millions of people who would read the story and say, yeah, hell yes, I would stay. It's really tough about the girl, but I mean, if the girl's not there, then there would be thousands and thousands and thousands of sick kids. They die early. But it was never entered my mind. Once Le Guin closes the gate on the story and basically says some people leave, essentially saying what she doesn't say because she's too good a writer to say it, but she's essentially saying, what would you do? And it's like, of course I'd leave. Of course I would leave. So that's a great question.